Everyone wants to take their business, their skills, to the next level. Small and mid-sized business owners have exceptional insight into how to do this. They endure and thrive because they find ways to overcome the challenges that come their way, and they can teach us valuable lessons to apply to our own companies and lives. Stephen Nooner, founder and owner of Alkali, a company with a unique process that helps businesses more effectively buy and manage their insurance programs. And Bob Gibbons, builder of Riata Commercial Realty, a real estate advisor and tenant advocate, are two prominent Metroplex businessmen who, along with their weekly guests, will ask their and your probing questions, finding impactful solutions that will help you reach for the next level. Here are your hosts, Stephen Nooner and Bob Gibbons.
Welcome to The Next Level, Conversations that Propel Business. I'm your host, Stephen Nooner.
And this is Bob Gibbons, and we're here with another great guest this week. And Stephen, I don't know that we've had a guest that has worn me out before I've ever even met him more than our guest today. Wade Myers is the managing partner of Boldmore Growth Partners, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. This guy grew up with no electricity or plumbing in North Dakota, of all places. He's been an Army Ranger, and by the way, when he was an Army Ranger, you know, they got to jump out of planes. He survived a parachute failure. He has top security clearance. He went to Harvard Business School and was in the top 5% of his class.
Just Harvard?
Just Harvard, you know, no big deal. But he's also been now involved with a bunch of different companies, 25 different companies in which he's been an angel investor, started up, been on the board, whatever. 68 financings, M&A deals he's been involved with. I mean, this guy's really got all kinds of stuff. By the way, he's got the Bronze Star when he was in the military.
Nice.
So I don't know what else to say right now, but he has been just to cap it all off, he's been a roofer's assistant.
Wow.
When he was young, he fueled trucks at a truck stop.
And you left off what he's going for right now. I heard he's applying for the most interesting man alive with Dos Equis beer.
Exactly. Welcome, Wade Myers.
Welcome.
Thanks. Great to be here, guys.
Well, we like to start off every show with the wisdom of others, and we're going to use a quote that you gave us from George Gendron. And it is, the overwhelming majority of small business owners create zero equity. You spend a lifetime building a company only to discover when it's time to sell, it's worthless. Why does that mean something to you? I think it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it is. One of the, in all of my business building efforts, almost all of them, we've always done lots of acquisitions. We've always built up the company with acquisitions. So right now, for example, I'm chairman of a company I founded 14 years ago, and we've completed, 4 acquisitions this year and have done quite a few over our history. So oftentimes we're buying these companies from small business owners. And it's kind of painful to see what they go through on the other side of the table. And we also have many small businesses that we advise through my advisory business. And it's very difficult to see that 30, 40 years in not having really created much value, because the owner, it's that whole thing where the business sort of owns the owner, or the owner owns a job.
Right.
And they're working in the business, not on the business, and all those kinds of trite phrases you hear. But if the business owner is kind of the hub and spoke model, and they make all the decisions, call all of the shots, and it's really, they're kind of making all the sales, they have all the key relationships, they can't just sell that business and walk away and golf and retire in dignity.
Sure.
No one's really going to pay hardly anything for that. And in many cases, they have a lot of liabilities. They have a building lease that a buyer might not want that and might just want to move the people into their facility. And so you kind of look at all those things and you go, at the end of the day, most of them aren't creating any value. They're able to make an income, but there is no big payday. And that's really disheartening. So why it means something to me is that now I started an advisory business a couple of years ago to address that issue, to say, I'm here to help. I've got advisors and process to help grow the value, to help create a team, create a growth structure, extract yourself from the daily grind, and build something that will be valuable, that people will want to acquire, and you can retire in dignity after all of those years of working so hard. The other reason why it's meaningful is it's really funny. Small business, what I realized after I bought my first couple of small businesses, it's way harder than when I was a corporate executive, way harder. So you have far fewer resources, far less money.
Right.
You don't have the skill sets, et cetera. But yet, small businesses in America create 2/3 of all the new jobs.
Which is crazy, right? When you think about it.
Right. So like the largesse of the corporate. So when I was a corporate executive, I was a national marketing executive at Mobile. We had 16 or 17 corporate jets. You could just call in and lay on a jet. I'm going to take a customer elk hunting. You know what I mean? You just, and when you lay off, though, you lay off like 10,000 at a time. Meanwhile, when I acquired my first small business, it was a real comeuppance. It was very humbling to go, wow, this is hard. This is way harder than we ever talked about. We didn't learn this at Harvard Business School, right? We learned about big numbers.
Yeah. Right.
So there's a lot fewer zeros, a lot fewer employees, to all the, everything. And it's a struggle. And
It's hard to afford taking that client on a jet to Elk Hunt, isn't it?
Yeah. You don't fly first class when you're a small business owner, right?
So what do you think in that? I mean, because that's an interesting little distinction there, a big distinction. Like what is the difference? Like if you had to really kind of boil it down to its essence, what's the biggest distinction? I mean, obviously resources and all that, but that's all kind of superficial. What's the what's at the core of that you think is the difference
between the big companies
between
and the small?
the big companies and the small?
And why it's so difficult?
Yeah.
Well, so a small business owner typically is really good at doing the one thing that they do. So they'll often start a company. Let's say a roofing company is good at putting roofs on buildings, right? An interior finish out company is good at doing interior finish out. So they kind of do the thing. And they're usually very weak at the bookends. Sales, marketing, and lead generation on one bookend, right? And then finance, control, and accounting on the other one. And it's just sort of natural to be focused on ops because that's what they do. And so over time, it's really difficult then to create enough earnings to be able to hire skilled people that can come in underneath you and take managerial positions and that you can delegate to, right? And so in many cases, it's sort of this treadmill of, I'm not making enough to hire somebody that I need, so I'll hire someone that's lower skilled. I'll put up with Joe, even though Joe's, I'll call Joe my CFO, even though he doesn't have an accounting degree and doesn't really know the numbers and is misbooking everything. You know what I mean? So you just see that a lot. You see a lot of title inflation and a lot of underskilled and lack of resources. They often can't get the financing they need. And so it's just a constant struggle. And I can remember when I acquired two little companies and stitched them together. So I had about $4 million in revenue. And man, I had to anguish over buying a new computer for an employee. It's like, wow, thousands of dollars. Where's it coming from? Yeah.
Right.
Whenever I left the corporate world and started my own company, people would ask me, what do you miss the most about being in the corporate world? And I said, all those departments at, quote, corporate that drove me crazy, legal, marketing, you name it, what I wouldn't do to have those people again that I could delegate to, that I could rely on. And, I don't have those people anymore and I can't afford those people. So, I'm definitely that exact case study of what you're talking about. And yeah, I mean, now it's hard to in a giant corporation, sometimes it's hard to move the pendulum or move the ship because it's such a huge beast, right? Whereas, hey, we're very nimble. We can change on a dime if we want to as smaller business people. But so let's get back to Boldmore real quick. So Boldmore is an investor in other companies, but it's also an advisor to companies?
Yeah, so a couple clarifications. So our advisory division advises small businesses. Our typical client is $5 million to about $100 million in revenue. We have some that are larger, some are smaller, but that's kind of the typical range. And the average baby boomer in the U.S., the average business owner in the U.S. is a baby boomer. And so they're kind of in that sort of mid-50s to 70-ish range, and they are facing an exit. Whether they're ready for it or not, whether they want to think about it or not, right, there's a pending transition. And so our typical client is looking to they're looking for help to prepare for that transition, to create value, to maximize their exit, right? And so that's what we do. Now, I do have a venture capital and private equity fund. We're a global fund with offices in Zurich, Annapolis, and Dallas. And I have a real estate investment fund, but those are different. Those are separate. Okay. So at Boldmore, we just facilitate growing a company, preparing it for sale, and helping them sell it.
Okay.
How do you get people, you talked about the boomers, how do you get them to engage that conversation, right? Because, I mean, that's, I think, the big thing I saw somewhere in your website or somewhere where there's just all this massive value trapped in these companies, no plan. And a lot of it's just going to be, we call it the fadeaway jump shot. I mean, it's just going to go away because they don't have a plan. How do you get people to start thinking about, I need a plan?
Yeah, so typically when we speak, we usually get a lot of clients. So if we have a bunch of business owners in a room and they hear us talk about how to plan for an exit or when exits go wrong, right? A lot of times it's the sort of the failure stories. Then that usually motivates them. But how we really get them to focus on creating value, and by the way, of all of our clients, on average, we double their equity value every year. So as they're preparing to exit, if we're working with them for 2 years, we've quadrupled their equity value. And so how we get them to really focus on that is, and I've gone through a lot of iterations of this and made a lot of mistakes in the early months of doing this, right? But I'm not trying to turn them into CPAs. I'm not trying to turn them into, let's be an accounting guru. I'm not trying to turn them into McKinsey consultants. Oh, be an analyst, analyze your own data. And a lot of times that's what they get. Here, buy this analytic software. Look for insights in your data, right? Sure. And so what we do is we've constructed a set of dashboards that just says we're going to pull together your information, all of your competitors' information, all the benchmarking, right? The industry information, what's happening strategically. We pull all that together to where we're kind of the McKinsey or BCG in the box. We're the Harvard MBA in the box. We're the CFO in the box. And we just give it to them straight in plain English.
And that's proprietary software you guys developed?
Yes, it is. We've developed. But it's kind of like you have a collections problem. You're financing your customers. Your average days outstanding, that customers owe you is 62 days, for example. The other 30,000 companies in your industry is 28 days, right? And then we say, if you were just average, right, you'd have an extra $1 million of cash. And that gets them motivated, right? They're like, whoa, get that for me, right?
Wow. Now, one of the other things that I saw on your website that I found really interesting was that 50% of businesses have an unplanned event that sort of forces a sale. And I think you mentioned the 5 Ds.
Yes.
Divorce and then what else? I don't remember what else.
Death, divorce, disability, disease, and disagreement, like with your partners or whatever. So yes, 50% of transitions are completely unplanned. 2/3 of small business owners, and I'm quoting the Exit Planning Institute data. They do an extensive small business owner survey every year, and they basically say 2/3 haven't even thought about a transition, let alone an involuntary one.
So these people really, even if they're not planning to sell their company in the foreseeable future, they really ought to be operating their business in that mode just because of those 5 Ds that you're talking about, because there's a 50-50 shot they're going to have something happen.
Well, and you should always run your business to maximize value. It gives you all the options, right? But what that means is 50% of the families of business owners are going to have a real mess on their hands. They might not even really know where the office is or the key to the front door.
Right.
And for that all to happen, though, it requires an extra D, which is discipline.
Yes.
Not something all entrepreneurs are good at. We're going to go to break. When we come back with Wade, for every 6 companies that start, how many make it to 5 years, $1 million or $10 million in revenue? Stick around. 667 companies. Stick around.
And now, Confessions of a Recovering Landlord.
This is Bob Gibbons with Riata Commercial Realty, and I am your recovering landlord. After 20 years as a landlord, I now use that experience only for the benefit of companies that lease or buy office buildings and warehouses. Today's confession: knowledge is power. We all negotiate from a position of power and strength, or at least we want to. In any negotiation, the party with the most knowledge probably has the upper hand. And landlords count on this being the case whenever you're negotiating a lease, because most landlords are professional real estate investors and they hire professional leasing agents and property managers. Landlords are in the market every day negotiating leases, while tenants probably only negotiate 1, maybe 2 leases every few years. So tenants feel outgunned. Don't let landlords have all the power. As a former landlord for 20 years, I understand how landlords think and what motivates them. So let me put that knowledge and experience to work on your side of the negotiation. To learn more, contact me at TexasTenantRep.com. Again, that's TexasTenantRep.com.
Have you started making plans to take your business to the next level in 2016? Hi, I'm Stephen Nooner, founder and CEO of Alkali. We have a trademark process called the Empowered Advantage that enables CEOs, business owners, and entrepreneurs to more effectively buy and manage their insurance. Before sitting down to make your plans for the new year, here are just a few things to consider. Would you say that you have an actual insurance strategy, one that you can articulate, or have you just purchased a policy here and there over the years? If you have an insurance strategy, was it discussed under the pressure of a renewal deadline or considered earlier in the year to avoid fire drill decision making? If your answer was no to either of these questions, then you may not have the right partner on your team. Visit alkaliservices.com to contact us and take the next step to a bigger and better future.
Hi, I'm Gary Booth, president and owner of InterNetworks, an innovator in technology. And hanging out with Bob and Steve is like reverting from digital to analog.
Welcome back to The Next Level, conversations that propel business. We're here with our guest, Wade Myers of Boldmore Growth Partners, and you can find them on the web at boldmore.com.
So, Wade, I used a stat when we went off. I misquoted it. It's forever 667 companies started. You had some interesting stats. 167%, 25% of them are alive after 5 years. 8 will survive and reach $1 million in revenue. And 1 of that 667 will ever reach 10 million. So that's like pretty crazy. I think we've heard that. Anyone that's been around kind of the business entrepreneurial world have heard that similar stats many times. But you have a lot of experience. So if there were 2 or 3 things that just every business owner needs to do to survive these stats, what are the things that you think people need to do?
Yeah, so there's a lot of reasons for failure, but first of all, we have to kind of go through a little bit of the human psyche, right? We make decisions emotionally. So if you've seen the Simon Sinek TED Talk about Start With Why, where all that came from is Antonio Damasio is a brain surgeon, and he found that patients that had brain damage in the emotional center of their brain, where emotions were, could not make decisions. They could still analyze and be very smart and do math problems, but they could not make a decision. So clearly we make decisions emotionally. So think of every entrepreneur. Hey, I got a great idea. This is going to work. It's going to be bigger than Google. You know, I've heard that so many times. Bigger than Facebook and Google. And you know, it's sort of like when your daughter comes home with this young man and she's all excited about him. He's wonderful. And you're kind of going, and you see all the flaws and she doesn't, right? So it's that exuberance of being in love. So entrepreneurs are very passionate. They have to be to carry them through all the valleys. So they often fall in love with an idea and they jump on it and they start to execute. So because they make decisions emotionally, we all do, but entrepreneurs are really bad at this. It's really hard to take in objective data that says, maybe you should do this, maybe it won't work, maybe this, maybe that, right? And there's a lot of information that affect a business opportunity. There's this strategic context, right? How do you compete with the big behemoths, right? Like right now, how do you compete with Amazon on retail? You know, it's those kinds of things, right? So there's strategic issues at play, and we've isolated 50 key principles strategically from the industry, the market, the type of offering you have, the customer relationship, that all are predictive of success or failure, right? And then there's just all the tactics too. A lot of entrepreneurs are really not good at all of the disciplines required, and not that they have to do all of those things from finance and accounting to legal to HR to strategy, right, sales to marketing. Yeah, but you need to understand enough to manage well, to be kind of a general manager of excellence, to know enough about how's my sales pipeline coming along, how's my financing pipeline, et cetera, because you have to manage all that. So there's a tremendous amount of skills that has to come together with the right strategic context that says you're going to be able to compete. Yes, you have good product market fit. The customers, you know, want what you're producing, et cetera. And so oftentimes also an entrepreneur out of their passion will create an offering or product without ever looking into the whites of the eyes of a customer. And so I'll get guys all the time. I have a venture fund, right? I'll get entrepreneurs like, yeah, I got this great product, this great app I've developed, right? Great. How many customers do you have? I've been spending really all my time focusing on the app. Well, have you talked to customers to make sure, well, I've been so busy producing the app. It's like, I'm sorry, we're, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I was interested on your website. You have a really great sort of a roadmap to success on your advisory services, and you start off with, you know, step one is, you know, what the lay of the land is, sort of, you know, what's your current status analysis. But number 2 is not sort of the next step on the road. It's actually the end of the road.
Right.
The exit analysis. So tell us why that's so important to make sure that that's the second thing you talk about, not the third or fourth or fifth.
Right. It's really important to shoot the azimuth. The course. If I'm going to travel at 270 degrees, I need to know where my destination is. It's sort of like a thing if you set out in a rowboat and you don't have a destination. It's sort of like you're just going to be at the mercy of the wind and waves, right? So we have to know what the destination is. What are we trying to do here? And for all business owners, we would suggest at Boldmore that it's all about building equity value and having a goal of building a business that has significance, that employs people, creates opportunities, solves problems for customers, et cetera. So tell us what your goal is. And in many cases with our advisory clients as baby boomers that are looking at an exit sometime in the next 2 to 5 years is our typical time frame that our clients will tell us. We're saying, great. Where do you want to be in 2 to 5 years? What does that exit look like? What is the cash in pocket after all the friction costs of taxes, broker fees, lawyer fees, et cetera? What does that need to be? And oftentimes we always encourage them to get with their tax advisor and a wealth management advisor to help plan out what they need. So we help them with, tell us where you're headed, and now we'll help you get there. So it's always like, where are you at now? Where do you want to go to? And then how do you get there? And then we help them on that journey and accelerate that journey to get to their goal.
And are your services as this advisor, is it kind of like a coach, business coach kind of thing almost, or is it really more you're sort of coaching them through how to get to that exit for then the purpose of then becoming their advisor on the M&A?
Well, so we have a couple of different plans. One is that we show them all the dashboards and all the reports, and they kind of just do it themselves, right?
Okay.
We also have one where that plus we provide a lot of consulting services, and it's way more than coaching. We actually get in there and do that. So we have everything from fractional CFOs to fractional COOs, et cetera, that actually execute the work to quickly get to the goal. It's like you don't have time to try to recruit somebody that has all the right skill sets. We'll bring somebody in, right? And then and so we also have a plan where we actually take over and just manage the company for them and say, oh, let's just start doing that now and putting people in place and start freeing up your time, et cetera. So we have kind of different types of plans to say, how quickly do you want to get there? And always in a way that is affordable for the business and is appropriate for the business. So as part of that, some of that there'll be an equity upside or incentive for us, right? Mm-hmm. Right. Now, and we're happy to take the business to market when they are ready to go to the market. And because we know the business so well, we've already done, prepared all the documents, et cetera. I mean, it's kind of like a slam dunk. I don't want to make it sound like it's an overnight process, but we are well prepared then to take them to market. And oftentimes we will either acquire them for our portfolio or through my private equity fund, right? But only at the market rates. We don't take advantage of any insider, it's like, here's the market value. Would you like to just execute a deal now at the market value? But we're not trying, that's not the end goal is, hey, let's get inside there and buy this company for a discount. Not at all. It's like we are here to help them on that journey with several different options in terms of whatever they want to do.
Do you ever have, after your services, after things get really going, where they say, I don't want to sell?
Oh, yeah. You know what that's like? It's like falling in love all over again.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of going on the marriage retreat like, honey, I love you so much. But oftentimes I've seen this where I've literally had sellers pitching, where I'll bring in a private equity firm, right? Mm-hmm. To buy them, and they'll say, well, tell me about your business, Tom. And Tom will start talking about the history, and I did this, I did that. And he's getting so wound up. You can see that, man, there's no way this guy's going to sell. Right? He's thrilled with where things are at. And this brings up a good point. Our favorite exit option for the entrepreneur is not to sell. It's to keep it and basically be the chairman and the major shareholder. And so we showed them how to bring in a management team, how to, carve out some equity or upside for them and basically kind of professionalize this to where they still own the majority of the company and they are getting the majority of the earnings and they're getting like the best of everything. And then because they've sort of stepped away and are we got a husband and wife team right now, they're chairman and vice chairman, right? They can sell and retire. There's nothing that says to any buyer, oh, they have to be here? Not at all. They've long since replaced their team. So that's actually our favorite is no exit at all. Yeah. But now whenever something does happen, right, they've kind of prepared to sort of maybe the kids inherit those, the ownership or whatever. But actually the money taken out is much bigger than what they would live on by selling their company.
So that's
right?
why it's your favorite?
It is. It's the best thing for them. And that's often not an exit option they've thought about, where I say, just hang on to the asset.
So by saying that, then I guess just doing the math, the multiples of EBITDA when somebody sells has to be less than what they would. I'm not sure I'm saying this
I know
way.
I know what you're asking. Let me break the math down
Okay.
for you. Typically, when you sell a business, whatever you sold it for, you're going to pay about 30% in friction costs, right? So let's say you sell for $5 million. Okay, you're going to spend about 30% of that $5 million, $1.5 million, on 20% capital gains right off the top, right? Broker fees, M&A fees, kind of lawyer, CPA, et cetera. So then you're going to net $3.5 million off of 5, right? Gross price. 3.5 is what you have in your pocket now. You invest that at a safe rate, let's say 5%, where you never touch capital. 5%, you pay taxes on that. You're netting $170,000, give or take, about 1/7 of what you were making. Because you were making, let's say, $1 million. Your business was worth 5 times earnings, so $5 million, and that's your gross price, right? You go from $1 million to 1/7 of $1 million. That's kind of the ratio in terms of your annual earnings compared to what you were taking out of the business. So now that's the gap that most of them say, gasp, I'm making $1 million. We have 2 or 3 vacation homes. It doesn't work, right? You're right, it doesn't. However, if you carve out 20% for a management team, have them lean into this deal, quickly grow it. You can grow into that, what you were missing, but you're still taking out $800,000. You only gave up 20% of your $1 million, and you're growing maybe 10% per year, right? It's a better deal. So oftentimes they want to redeem their time, but keep their same lifestyle. The only way to do that is to say, let's quickly grow you past the cost of bringing in a management team and carving out enough upside for them to be excited about running your company forward.
And of course, that $800,000, that's pre-tax, right? So after tax, it's less than that. So that's not 177 versus 800 is not quite the right math. It's probably whatever that net is.
Right, but it's
still
far
a lot
higher.
more.
Yeah,
good math,
it's
though.
3 or 4. Right. Yeah, so it's basically it's an exit
I didn't go to
option.
Harvard, but I'm just saying.
I was too lazy to fill out the application, but I did look at it. Okay, so we don't have much time here, about 30 seconds left, but what are the main reasons why people's attempt to sell fail?
Yeah, so this is sobering. Only 25% of all businesses listed for sale actually get sold. And in many cases, because there wasn't any real value there, right? In other cases, it was very poorly presented. And so it's just really too hard for a potential buyer to discern. The financials are messed up. They're not, laid out properly. They're cash or modified cash as opposed to GAAP accrual financial statements. The owner is too important to the business, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a whole host of reasons why it just wasn't ready to sell and no one would be interested.
Well, Wade, thanks so much for being our guest today. We really enjoyed it. Please go to boldmore.com or wadetmyers.com, MYERS. And if you want to know more about the show, go to nextlevelshow.com, and you can find us on podcast at The Next Level Show.
If you know a successful business owner who's not thinking about some of these things, help spread the word and get the message out. Have a great week.
So we have.
You have been listening to The Next Level, Conversations That Propel Business with Stephen Nooner and Bob Gibbons. Join us every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. for more prolific conversations that will take your business to the next level.